أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي عرفني نفسها ولم يتركني أميان القلب والحمد لله الذي جعلني من أمتي سيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين طه وياسين أحمد محمود أبو القاسم محمد ومن المحبين عترة الطاهرين لعنة الدائمين من الآن إلى يوم الدين على أعدائهم أما بعد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس صلوات. Mu'minin, this is the last but one in the series of steps that we take towards becoming better human beings and hence better Muslims. The subject today is religious harmony leading to peace for humanity. As part of the humanity, we all have a responsibility to make this world, to make this planet a better place. And in particular, the Holy Quran invites us and gives us a responsibility in this ayah that I began with, that we have created you a nation most balanced. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Ummatan wasata is a concept which is translated in many ways. One of the best translations one can use is a nation or a community or an ummah most balanced. And what is more, that Allah is inviting us that we have created you a balanced nation so that you may be a witness, you may be an example upon mankind. So this is a responsibility that has been put on us, that you must be exemplary in your conduct, you must be exemplary in the life that you lead so that you are an example for the rest of mankind. And this indeed is our call. So going back just to refresh our memories, we've gone through 7 subjects here which lead us to this concept of religious harmony leading to peace for humanity. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll conclude this message on the night of Ashura to actually say how does the message of Karbala, which is so endearing to us, how does it transform us so that we may be that example. So life is a movement. The cells in our body continue to move, the blood moves, the universe moves, everything is in a state of motion. And when we sit on this first Shahzah, we have an opportunity to renew our bond with Abu Abdullah, and we continue to move with Imam Hussain alayhi salam. When I say that we do not just move with Imam Hussain alayhi salam in history, but we must also continue to move with him in reality, in revolution, in reformation. I began in the very first presentation that we had to say the test of all these efforts that we put in lie in the fact that am I a better human being at the end of this experience? Have I changed some of my habits? Have I become less judgmental? Have I become a more caring person? Have I created more empathy within myself? Is something that only I can judge for myself, no outsider can. So let this journey begin as we wind this series down. You know, sometimes we confuse motion with progress. All motion is not progress. You remember sitting on that horse. We had motion. The children enjoyed sitting on that. But it was not moving. The horse was just rocking, and a rocking horse keeps moving but does not make any progress. So what we need to do is we need to consider that we need to keep moving so that there is progress, and we need to fulfill that mandate of universal and moral leadership that we have created you a nation most balanced so that you may be an example upon mankind. This requires some rigor. It's not easy. And sometimes it's hard work. You know, intellectual self-determination to actually do a muhasiba with one's own self, to have a conversation with one's own self, to say that am I really moving, am I stagnant, is the answers will lead you to ensure that you are in a state of movement. Because the second part of the ayah says, so that you may be an example upon mankind, and therefore our task today is to show, and particularly today, when from every corner our great faith is under attack in one way or another, that Islam is for the entire humanity, it's a message for the whole world, and its teachings are in harmony with other faiths. The Blessed Prophet was declared Rahmatul lil Alameen. It was not just for the Muslims. It was Alameen, meaning the plural is being used. We don't know what other civilizations exist in the galaxies, that the word has been used as a plural of the Alameen instead of the Alam. Suffice it to say that the Blessed Prophet's message that he brought from Allah was for all times and for all faiths, for the entire humanity. We have a responsibility because we are the conveyors of that message. Having said La ilaha illallah, we have now a responsibility to transmit. We have Karbala. We have Karbala that inspires us towards that goodness and ethical conduct so that we can become those exemplary people. And therefore, if the Quran that was brought by the Blessed Prophet, if the Quran is a source of such inherent power that those who truly follow its teachings can never be humiliated or defeated, cannot fail. So how can we fail? We cannot fail if we stick to the principles of the Quran. But the reality that we find is different. And this is the muhasiba. This is the conversation that we need to have with ourselves. What you see there is an amoeba. And what happens is that our response is that we have more and more mosques. We have more and more Muslim organizations that grow. We actually multiply by dividing ourselves like amoebas. You know, Allama Iqbal says something very beautiful in terms of that fervor. You know, a mosque in Lahore was destroyed. And in one night, in their fervor, the people built that mosque. And Allama Iqbal said something which is so profound, that masjid to banadi shabbar mein, masjid to banadi shabbar mein iman ki hararat walon ne, man apna purana papi hai barson mein namazi ban na sake. Those with a fervor in their faith built that mosque in a night, but the heart is sinful that did not prostrate in years. building structures, building organizations in the zeal and the fervor does not necessarily make us that Ummat-e-Wasata. Work has to be done. The community needs to come together so that we understand. One of the things that I talked about yesterday was the stagnation that we have when we continue to obsess on the form rather than the essence. When we look at the rituals without the essence, the rituals are a container. Without the rituals, the essence of faith is difficult. But if the rituals are empty without the essence of faith, it's like saying what Maulana Room said, you have the bottle of perfume, the most beautiful oud perfume that you may have. If you don't open the bottle and smell the beautiful scent, you will never experience the oud. And the idea is not to stagnate. What we have become, the Muslims had a glorious past. When you look at the inventions, when you look at the ulum that were brought in, at the zenith of the Muslim civilization, we have a glorious past. What we have become today are the processors of ideas, from the processor of ideas into recyclers of ideas. Intellectual thought and the thought leadership in the world has been taken by other people, and we have become the recyclers of other people's ideas, while we have the fountainhead of the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to give us those ideas which nobody else could have. I will give you one example from the Nahjul Balagha. Very simple, that Imam Ali alayhi salam defines Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say that God is one, his definition of that one is totally unique. Nobody else had actually presented it in that way. He said, this is that one which can neither be added nor can it be divided. The difference between Ahad and Wahid, that Ahad is that one where you add 1 plus 1 cannot become 2, 1 divided by 2 would not become half. It is that one which is single, which is unique. And this is the kind of lofty thought of which we have inherited. Why have we become the purveyors and the recyclers of ideas? In the moral and the spiritual front, we are trying to recycle, sometimes seem to be borrowed ideas rather than the originality of thought. This is where we stagnate. The role of the Blessed Prophet was that وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. As I said before, we have sent thee not but as a mercy for all creation. And we are the custodians of that message, to spread that message to the people around you. We cannot, mu'mineen, sit within our four walls and mourn Sayyid al-Shuhada and not ensure that that message transmits beyond these walls. It's a responsibility in particular to our young people who now have access to the best of education, that they go into academia, that they are able to ensure that the thought leaders emerge from the Muslims, and in particular the thought leaders that we have emerge from the followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Salawat. If we look, and my subject is rendering peace in humanity and the model that we have, that with that preamble, let us look at the environment in Makkah when the Blessed Prophet said, Kulu la ilaha illallah tuflihu, say la ilaha illallah so that you may be delivered. There was no moral code. Ignorance was a symbol of pride. Slavery was commonly practiced. The weak had no rights or human dignity. Young girls were buried alive. Warfare and bloodshed was a hobby. Idolatry was present everywhere. And this is what the Blessed Prophet was facing. He was able to tilt that balance. And it is that very thing that we need to understand, that tilting of the balance of tribal power was the message, the true message of La ilaha illallah. the parents of Ammar, a close companion of the Blessed Prophet, Yasir and Sumayya were idol worshippers, and suddenly they see an idol falling from the mantelpiece that they were worshipping, and the idol breaks. They remember the thoughts of their son, Ammar, and they perceive that an idol that breaks into pieces can do nothing for us. It was in that way, touching one person at a time, the Blessed Prophet was able to change minds and change those hearts, so that he was able to create a unique society. Sadly, at that time, and this happens in many societies, when you try and bring a change, Makkah and the kuffar of Makkah were unable to digest the message of La ilaha illallah, which made the Blessed Prophet do the hijrah from Makkah to Medina. So now he comes to Medina. I'm painting this picture so that we can see some of the parallels in the society of Medina and what we have today, because if we are talking about humanity at large, we have to go back and study history, and there is no better history to study about peace and aman and tolerance and compassion and all the great values, except the value of humanity that was practiced by the Blessed Prophet in the city of Medina. So, who were in Medina at that time? People who were coming, the Muhajirs, they had left everything behind, they had very little. You had the Ansar. Not all the Ansar were very wealthy. Yet look at the idea of this giving and taking between the Muhajirs and the Ansars. We read in history that when the Blessed Prophet asked them, the Ansar gladly shared whatever little they had with the Muhajirs. The idea of a sharing and a caring society was emerging in an Arabia which was considered to be a period of Jahiliyyah, where there would be wars simply because one camel strayed into the area of another tribe and a war would begin. Indeed, a man comes, this was in Makkah, a man comes to the Blessed Prophet and he said, give me some advice. And the Blessed Prophet said, control your anger. So he said, give me some more advice. And the Prophet said, control your anger. So he said, anything else? No, he said, control your anger. Fine, the man leaves. Now, this thing happened. Some issue happened, and the two tribes were going to go to war for a small reason. So this tribal chief, who had been told, control your anger, is now facing, as it was in those days, that the two chiefs would face each other and begin the battle. So just as they were going to begin the battle, the words of the Prophet resonate in the ears of the tribal chief. Control your anger. Steps back for a minute and said, if our people have damaged some of your property, I am willing to give you recompense and compensate you for it. Let us not fight. Control your anger. The result was that the chief on the other side said, I am no smaller a man than you are. If you are saying you are going to recompense, I forgive you. The entire thing tilted, it balanced. These were the words of the Blessed Prophet, simple but powerful words of saying, how do we change? So you had the Muhajir and the Ansar, and then you had the Jews within the Medina society who were wealthy traders, and they were very anxious about this Prophet who had come. It must have been a time of great anxiety for them. And then finally you had the pagans who were indifferent, but were kind of hearing things, and they were questioning their own beliefs. I'm painting a picture of the visage of Medina as the Prophet began his mission in Medina. What does he do? He, with this following that he had, he could have easily used his status as Rasulullah to legitimize his rule. He could have ruled Medina with an iron fist because he had the support. He had the power to do so. And he could disregard the consent of non-Muslims in accepting him as the leader of Medina, because the Jews and the pagans would not be ready. The Muhajir and the Ansar would be. He could have done it. He did not do it. What he did illustrates a relationship between revelation and a constitution which is made by men. The connection. And the very first constitution in this modern society ever was drafted. Instead, the Blessed Prophet Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam chose to act in a spirit of democracy agreed upon by people of diverse backgrounds. He started making consultations with the others and actually got consensus, where he was able to create two things. One, he created the concept of Ummatul Mu'mineen, which is what we call the Ummah today. At the same time, he recognized the Jewish tribes living in Medina, granting each tribe the right to be in one community with their believers. And yet it became, the fact that some of them backstabbed him is another story. But what the Blessed Prophet did was, at that time he brought everybody, under this constitution, and the city-state of Medina was born, which is a forerunner of the many states that we have today. This Mu'mineen is our legacy. A model pluralistic society in practice. These days we shudder. Sometimes we misunderstand. Pluralism is not a compromise of our faith. Social, economic pluralism means that you agree to exist and coexist. Does not mean that you forsake any of our core beliefs, nor do you expect others to forsake their core beliefs. Therefore, a model pluralistic society which had civil rights and responsibilities, this was a society that was respecting diversity. It was respecting the freedom of speech and religion. It was elimination of prejudice, and it was governance through consultation and inclusiveness. Study, if you will, please, because sometimes we don't go to the core literature that we have. Study the Constitution of Medina. Look at the commentaries that have been written about the Constitution of Medina. Sometimes I'm surprised when people come to me and say, we didn't know there was a constitution of the city-state of Medina. Well, we had the very first constitution. So this was a fulfillment of the mission of the Blessed Prophet in terms of the Ummat-e-Wasata in Medina, which was going to be exemplary and an example for mankind. This was a divinely inspired reformist with discipline. He was a disciplinarian. He showed kindness and compassion, not only to those who belong to the Islamic fraternity, but to those outside the fold as well. And this was followed by the Imam alayhi salam. He was in Kufa. Imam alayhi salam was the caliph of the Muslims. And he suddenly see a Christian man. Some records say he was a Jewish man. It's not important whether he was Jewish or Christian. But this old man was seen begging in the streets. And Imam, when he finds him begging in the streets, he said, but you are a strong man. You worked all your life. Why are you begging? He said, now I have no one to support me. I have no children, and I'm old, and I cannot support myself. Therefore, I have no choice but to beg. And Imam orders that the man be given money from Baitul Mal, from the public treasury of the Muslims, that a Christian or a Jewish man was given money so that he would not need to beg. This is the welfare. This is the compassion that was shown by the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to say that this man was useful to society when he lived in our society. Now that he has no one to support him, it becomes a responsibility of the society to support him. It does not matter whether he's a Muslim or he's a non-Muslim. This is the teaching that we have. So what we had was that the Blessed Prophet created a morally pure, socially vibrant, racially and religiously coherent and a prosperous society that Medina was. Salawat. There are so many examples that we can give as to how the Blessed Prophet treated the people. And the same message was given by Imam alayhi salam to Malik-e-Ashtar when he was going to Misr as a governor. Amongst the letter that was written, and in fact that letter that was written or given to him was to Malik-e-Ashtar was actually recorded by the United Nations as a major document, and at one of the assemblies it was said that maybe the Muslim leaders need to read this letter of Imam Ali alayhi salam to Malik-e-Ashtar so that they would understand how to govern. Well, I wrote off to the United Nations when I saw that announcement, and I said it is not only the Muslims, it is the entire humanity and all the rulers who need to look at this letter that was written to Malik-e-Ashtar by Imam alayhi salam on the idea of governance. That, mu'mineen, is the legacy that we have. So here, the tolerance that was shown, we know very well about the Christians of Najran coming at the time of Mubahala to actually debate with the Blessed Prophet. And when they were asking certain questions, some of the companions were getting very angry, and the Blessed Prophet calmed them down to say they have a right to ask the question, and if they do not recognize me as a prophet, that is their right not to recognize me. They have come here to debate. After those sessions were finished, it is said that Sunday falls, and the Christian monks who had come said that we would like to go out of town so that we can conduct our services. What does the Blessed Prophet do? He said, you don't need to go out of town. This is also a house of God. Conduct your prayers right here in the mosque. It is a place consecrated to God. He allowed them to in fact pray inside the mosque of Medina to conduct their prayers. This is the level of understanding, compassion and tolerance that was taught to us by the Blessed Prophet. If the world were to understand this, the world peace can be founded only on this kind of understanding which is promoted through forbearance. Indeed, we were talking the other day, we had a conversation about the roles and responsibilities in the Charter of Human Rights. The idea is, if the world were to study the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, in this case, the teachings of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, in the treatise of Risalatul Hukuk, where he does not talk about rights, Imam talks about responsibilities of people upon each other, of people, for animals. The human right, the Charter of Human Rights, if it was conducted on the basis of a Charter of Human Responsibilities, the United Nations would have been a different place. Because before you demand your right, Islam teaches us, discharge your responsibility first. This is the message from the Blessed Prophet and the Aimma alayhimus salam. So, I'd like to make a comparison, because these things need to be relevant to us today. We cannot just bask in past glory that Muslims were XYZ, which they were, that the Blessed Prophet has had the ideal society in Medina, which is difficult to replicate. Who comes closest to the society of Medina? Which Muslim country comes closest? Which other country comes closest? Well, let's talk about Canada. Let's talk about here. We live here. 150 years of evolution to the multiculturalism that we see today here in Canada. In the initial period, those of you who have studied the history, and I'm sure you have, and know more about the history than I do, evolving the acceptance of diversity was something that was evolving as Canada itself was evolving. 70s was a period of thought where Canada was celebrating differences in the 70s. And then you move on to the 80s, that with the influx of many cultures, in the 80s, the issues of how do we manage this diversity was something that was vexing the authorities and the powers that be. In the 90s, having learned from that, was a period of constructive engagement so that all people who lived here, regardless of color or whatever it may be, felt that they were part and parcel of this land. The idea was accepting and respecting. It was not just a matter of tolerance, but the society slowly led towards a piece of understanding. There's a big difference. At one time we were talking about religious tolerance. If I say that I tolerate my brother here, it's not a very nice thing to say. If I say I understand him and that understanding will lead to love, that's a different matter. To tolerate somebody is a very negative thing. So we needed to move, and Canada in many ways, compared to other countries, moved from tolerance to understanding. And that is a stage of evolution. So here, I do this exercise so that we can compare. What does it mean to be a Canadian? Born here or holding just a Canadian passport? Or is there more to it? Well, somebody said that being a Canadian means being indefinable. I don't know what that means, but it could be that has many meanings, that you're not defining it as one monolithic block. It is a combination of many things. The fact that there is no prototype of a Canadian, a newcomer can come to Canada and be in love with this country as much, if not more, than a fourth or a fifth generation Canadian. This is how this society works. This is a quote from a scholar from Eastern Europe, and he also serves as an imam at one of the Muslim communities. Well, being Canadian means, and I'm sure that you have yourself experienced this, and if not, then I stand corrected, but this is what I have found, that each is welcomed, accepted, and respected, and the acceptance of and respect towards those who are different from us. And this is reciprocal. We must also, as Muslims, be in that mindset of the acceptance and respect towards those who are different from us, to be able to be a part of this society. So, being Canadian means that you're free to dream, you're free to speak, you're free to worship. You're feeling good in your own skin, no matter what the color is. Being what you are. You may be a Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, Jew, Muslim, non-believer or something else, does not prevent you from becoming a good Canadian citizen. That is a society that you live in, a society that many envy. In the rest of the world, Canada is looked upon as that multicultural society. Now, I ask you that when you look at the Medina society, do you find any contradictions in the principles of faith in terms of what you see? I'm not talking about the Canadian foreign policy. I'm not talking about those who support certain arms and all that. I'm talking about the core essence of Canadian society, that where is the difference in terms of the morality that you find here? In fact, when you compare it, and sadly, when you compare it to many Muslim countries, you find more Islamic values being practiced here in Canada than in other Muslim countries. And this is a realization and the blessing that we need to have. So, why should some of us struggle with the idea of multiculturalism in Canada? There are some who still do. We sometimes have a fear of our children being influenced. Yes, there are influences everywhere. But if the children are raised as good human beings, they will stick to those values. And we should not be afraid of our children in a multicultural society engaging with the rest of the world, because that is the world that they're going to be living in. We need to prepare them. We need to make sure that their immune systems, their religious immune systems are so strong that they are not caught by any other virus. I remember a long time ago, my son went to a Christian school in the UK. 7 years old. I get a call from the teacher that, can you please come? We need to have a teachers' conference. And I said, oh my God, I don't know what he has done. I go there, and he said, we don't understand this. This was a place in Buckinghamshire, in the UK. He said, he's a well-behaved person, well-behaved boy, but the other day he was very, very angry and he was very emotional. I said, what happened? He said, well, there was this religious class and we were teaching that Jesus is the Son of God. And he stood up and he said, no, that cannot be. Jesus is a prophet. I'm not going to accept that Jesus is a son of God. The idea is, if you had inculcated certain values, so we explained to them, and the teacher said, we had no idea. We had no idea that you also believe in Jesus and you consider him a prophet. Now we are going to change the way that we present this. The idea is that if we bring up our children on the basis that they are strong in their faith and they've understood it, then multiculturalism should not really bother us in the least. So I'm saying, what part of that is beyond the bounds of Ummat-e-Wasata as we live in this society? Now, no society is perfect. Every society has got something or other. But largely when you look at the Western model and you look at Canada as a country, it comes closest to the idea of what we try and see as Ummat-e-Wasata. Do we, Mu'mineen, not have the responsibility now to make it even better? To ensure that the values and the school of Ahlul Bayt becomes prevalent within the universities, that tomorrow we will have legislators who will sit and govern. You will have legislators who will make laws. And this is we are worried to say, what will happen to the third generation? Will it be washed away? Will it continue to have our culture? Well, I don't know whether they will have their culture. I don't have a crystal ball. But I do know this much, that if the values of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, of righteousness, of compassion, of tolerance, and above all, of justice are inculcated in a generation, then that generation itself will pick up the values. Otherwise, we worry for nothing, because Shaykh Ustad Mutahari said once that you don't have to worry about 7 generations. Just worry about the next one. Make sure that you bring up the next generation in such a way that they will be able to bring up the next generation in the same way that you were able to. Otherwise, this man goes to a soothsayer, somebody tells futures, comes back and he's in a bad mood. So his wife asked him to say, why are you in a bad mood? He said, well, I went to the soothsayer, the Joshi, as we call them in the Indian parlance, and he told me something that is really concerning me. He said, what did he tell you? He said, you'll have so much money, you'll have so much wealth, that 6 generations of your progeny will not need to work. So the wife says, this is good news, that you have 6 generations who will not need to work. He said, but I'm worried about the 7th generation. That's why I'm not happy. We don't need to worry about 6 and 7 generations. The idea is, and this country offers so much in terms of education, in terms of opportunities. At the same time, it gives us a greater responsibility, because you have people who are listening people who you will be able to better share the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam than perhaps anywhere else in the world. So as I said, no country, no land is perfect, but we do the best of that we can. So here, just a little bit of levity. that we live in Canada, anywhere that we live, this is the 21st century of what I call lessness. So our communication is wireless, our businesses are cashless, our telephones are cordless, our cooking is fireless, our youth are jobless, our religion is creedless sometimes, our food is fatless, thank God for that, our faith is godless, our labor is effortless, our conduct is worthless sometimes, our relations are loveless, our attitudes are careless, our feelings are heartless, our politics are shameless, our education is valueless, our follies are countless, our arguments are baseless, and our commitment is aimless. This is the society that we live in, where you have bigger freeways and smaller minds. You have a society where you have 5,000 Facebook friends and not a single friend that you can call your own. But the vessel is there for us to create, Mu'mineen, a better society when you integrate the potential that we have here with the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and truly we have an opportunity to actually be part of that Ummat Wasata, and that we are able to show that as an example. Salawat. So having looked at that very quickly, and I'll move on because time is moving on very fast, and I apologize for having taken a few more minutes yesterday. Now compare that with the Muslim Ummah. What do we Muslims have to show for ourselves as the Ummah? ISIS? Failed states? Killings? How many Nobel Prizes do we have? Even the one that we got, we are now disputing that he is not even a Muslim. The irony. And then how can we be champions of universal values? We cannot just be happy that we had a glorious history. So what is now the relevance of Karbala in shaping that future? That is the note that I would like to end on. Having looked at the pain points, having looked at the opportunities, almost we did a SWOT analysis of the opportunities that we have. Well, I don't have time for this. I'm going to jump on this, but there is some surveys that what is very important to Canadians. For example, this is a survey that happened a few years ago. Treating men and women equally, 95%. Following Canada's law, 89%. Tolerance of others, 82%. Voting in election, 82%. Protecting the environment, 80%. These are all good values. So it suggests that the Canadians have a broad, inclusive view of citizenship, and immigrants are looked upon as equals. And they say that nearly 9 out of every 10 respondents agree that a person born outside Canada is just as likely to be a good citizen as someone from here. So now, what can we do? There are 3 kinds of people sitting here. You have the wishbones, you have the jawbones, and you have the backbones. Now we are talking about a movement that we need to move. The wishbones are that we wish that we became that Ummat Wasata. They would continue to pray and wish for it. These are wishbones. Then there are jawbones like me who continuously speak about it, to say we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And that's where it stays. What we need is backbones who will stand up and say, I have to do something about it. I'm inspired by Karbala. I'm inspired by Medina. I'm inspired by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. I need to be a better Canadian so that I can make Canada better. I can make my city better. I can make my neighborhood better. This is what we need to do, Mu'mineen. The idea of that civic engagement, participating in local politics, running for your school board, your city council. More important, building a reputation as a good human being. The Blessed Prophet said, and I quote, that there can be no faith, Iman, to one who cannot be trusted, and no religion to one who does not fulfill his pledge. Whether it's in business, whether it's elsewhere. As a Muslim, my demonstration needs to be that I am a person of integrity. You know what integrity means? That you signal left and you turn left. It's not that you signal left and then you go and turn right. Integrity is saying what you do. We must live our faith as is ordained upon us, and civic engagement that stands up for justice while upholding piety and righteousness is something that we need to do. And then we cannot be one-sided. You know, we love rallies. Almost every weekend somewhere in North America, there's a rally going in downtown for Egypt, for Yemen, for Libya, for Gaza, for all the great causes. Tell me, how many of us have walked into a rally in order to, say, promote health reform in your own community? Or join the mothers for, drunk driving in a rally? That we must be part and parcel of the society that we live in. Voluntarism is another thing. I need to rush through this because of time. But there are many values where we can go and do something. It's something as simple as going to your school and say, I know you need volunteers, what can I do? Once you get in, you may be able to get into the school board, and before you know it, you'll be making policies for that school, for the good of the school. And the idea is that let's be an example that being a good human being, and let us not have double standards, Momini. Story that sticks with me is that someone goes to China to place an order for counterfeit t-shirts or golf shirts or whatever with the horse there. People like this horse so much. So he goes and says, okay, I'm giving you an order for 1,000 golf shirts with that horse there. So he takes the order and said, let me take you for lunch. He said, sure. He takes him for lunch. And he said, but can you please find a halal restaurant? Can you please find me a halal restaurant? So they go to the halal restaurant, and the Chinese supplier says, you're so worried about the meat that you're going to eat, which is good. But what about all those 1,000 t-shirts that you're going to be cheating people? How about that? Double standards that we sometimes have in terms of the integrity that we have, Momini. So this is life in multicultural Canada. And we have an opportunity, Mominin, to make a difference to humanity. This is but a microcosm of the society that we live in, that we take ourselves from the Medina society, we take the values of justice and social justice from Karbala to stand up for it, so that we are able to ensure that we have a progeny that is going to live after us, which is going to make a difference, and say that, Ya Allah, on the Day of Judgment, that we did our best to empower the next generation for them to take on. That's where our responsibility ends. We pray to Allah to give us tawfiq to be able to do that. Salawat. Women, tonight we remember an event. That event takes place at the time of Nabi Ibrahim, the Zib-e Azim, that was to come. There was a conversation between a father and a son then, where the son says, Father, do what you have been commanded to. I will be from amongst the patient ones. Today, there is another conversation that takes place between a father and a son who are steeped in Tawheed. Mu'minin, this father is none other than Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and the son is Janabi Ali Akbar, who today we gather here to remember. Over 3,000 years ago, Wahdaniya was at stake. Today, again, Wahdaniya is at stake. At that time, the prophethood was at stake. Justice was at stake. Today, again, justice is at stake. And this conversation that takes place, that miles away from Makkah, we once again see. And when Hazrat Ali Akbar asked his father to say, Oh father, I request for permission to go and fight the enemies of Islam. Imam says, Oh Akbar, you have my permission. May Allah be with you. But Akbar, you know that how much your mother, your sisters and your aunts love you. Go say farewell to them. Mu'mineen, we must be clear in our facts. Masaib sometimes are recited to say Ali Akbar went to get permission. You do not know, you do not go to take permission. You go to give your final farewell to the ladies in the Khaima. And when Hazrat Ali Akbar comes back, Mu'mineen, Imam Hussain prepares his son to go into battle. And he said, Ya Allah, be a witness against these people. For now, I send against them the son of mine, who bears the most resemblance to your messenger in features, in character, and in speech. Ya Allah, he is the one whom we look at whenever we desire to look at the Prophet. Mu'mineen, this parting must have been such a difficult parting. Imam helps his son mount the horse. As Hazrat Ali Akbar begins to ride towards the battlefield, Mu'mineen, what does he hear? What does he hear? He hears some footsteps. He hears some footsteps following him. When Hazrat Ali Akbar turns, what does he see? He looks back and he sees his old father. Mu'mineen, it is as if a Haji is walking behind his Qurbani. This was the visage of that time, and says, but father, we have said goodbye. Why are you walking behind me? Imam Hussain says, oh my son, had you been a father, you would surely have understood how difficult it is for a father to part with his son. Mu'mineen, after a fierce battle, as Hazrat Ali Akbar comes to the battlefield, and when they see him coming, perhaps the enemies may have seen to say, who is this coming to the battleground? Is this the Prophet of Islam coming to the battleground? And yet their greed did not allow them to come back and to understand what they were doing. But Hazrat Ali Akbar fights a fierce battle, and ultimately he is overpowered by the enemy who rush from all sides. As he falls, Mu'mineen, as he falls from his horse, he cries out, oh my father, my last salams to you. Hazrat Ali Akbar does not say, oh my father, come and help me. He says, oh my salams to you. Perhaps he realized how difficult it would be for a father to see in the state that he was. As he hits the ground, Mu'mineen, a spear that has wounded him is lodged in his chest, breaks, and the blade remains embedded in the chest of Hazrat Ali Akbar. When Imam hears Akbar salam, he looks at the Furat where Abbas lay and said, oh Abbas, now that this brother of yours needs you most, where have you gone? With all his strength set by the anguish of Akbar's voice, Imam Hussain begins to walk towards the battlefield. When Imam Hussain got to Hazrat Ali Akbar, he took him in his arms. Akbar had his right hand on his chest, Mu'mineen. Imagine, he placed his left arm over the shoulder of his father, and Hussain said, Akbar, why do you embrace me with one arm only? Hazrat Ali Akbar could not reply. Imam Hussain tried to move Akbar's hand. He resists, and Imam gently moves the hand, and what does he see? He saw the dreadful blade of the spear sticking out of his son's chest. Imam Hussain laid Ali Akbar on the ground, and sitting on his knees, he put both his hands on the blade of the spear, and then he looked at Najaf and cried out, oh father, I too have come to my Khyber. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Mu'mineen, बस उर्दू में दो अल्फाज. मोमिनीन, आप जानते हैं कि इमाम अलैहिस्सलाम के तीनों बेटे, वो जो आते तीनों का नाम अली है, तो पहचाने कैसे जाए? जो करबला में गए वो अली इब्न हुसैन ज़ैनुल आबिदीन के नाम से मशहूर. करबला में दो अली शहीद हुए. मोमिनीन, एक अली जो गोद में थे और एक अली अकबर. लिहाजा दोनों के नाम समझने के लिए छोटे को अली असगर कहा जाता है और बड़े को अली अकबर. मोमिनीन, बस कुछ अल्फाज के अली अकबर गए और लड़े. अरे जख्मी हुए, कैसे जख्मी हुए मेरे दोस्तों, इस जमान में ताकत नहीं कि मैं बयान कर सकूं. वो अकबर करबला के मैदान में जब आए, कहा गया कि वो सूरत नबी जैसी थी। अरे जिगर थाम के मोमिनीन सुन लीजिए, अशकिया ने आखिर नेजा मारा। अगर जो नेजा पड़ा तो जख्म पैसा हुआ, मगर कैसा जख्म मोमिनीन, ऐसा गहरा जख्म के सीने की हड्डियों ने जगह दे दी। अरे नेजे का फल आगे बढ़ा, ऐसे कलेजे को बढ़कर चूम लिया। मोमिनीन कहां से वो अल्फाज लाऊं कि बताऊं कि जख्म कैसा गहरा था। मोमिनीन घोड़े से गिरते हुए अली अकबर ने आवाज दी, बाबा मेरी आखिरी सलाम। इमाम हुसैन घोड़े से आगे बढ़े। गिरते हुए अकबर ने आवाज जब दी, हुसैन ने कान में अकबर की आवाज पहुंची, ऐ मेरी बहनों और भाइयों सुनो, हक से मातम अदा करो। अरे अकबर की आवाज सुनकर हुसैन चले, मगर कैसे चले? अरे रास्ता नजर नहीं आता। जब गिरते थे जब पुकारते थे या अली या अली, किस अली को पुकारते थे? शायद नजफ के अली को पुकारते हो उठाने के लिए, या करबला के अली अकबर को पुकारते, ऐ बेटा किधर हो? अकबर आवाज देते थे, मैं इधर हूँ। अलगरज मोमिनीन हुसैन अली अकबर की आवाज सुनते सुनते अली अकबर के पास पहुंचे, और बूढ़े बाप ने क्या देखा, क्या मंजर देखे। मोमिनीन तसव्वुरन पहले जमीन देखी होगी जहां नौजवान ने एड़िया रगड़ी थी। अरे बाप की नजर आगे बढ़ी तो अकबर के कुर्ते का वो दामन देखा जो सीने से खून से लाल था। मोमिनीन नजर आगे बढ़ी, सीना देखा, सीने में जख्म देखा, जख्मी कलेजा देखा, अरे नेज़े का फल देखा, और बूढ़ा बाप जमीने करबला पे बैठ कहा बेटा क्या हाल है? कहा बाबा कलेजे में नेज़ा बड़ी तकलीफ दे रहा है। मोमिनीन बस आखिरी अल्फाज, वो बाप का क्या इम्तिहान था कि जो नबी इब्राहिम ने देखा तो जन्नत छोड़ के आए। अरे रसूल अकरम शायद जन्नत छोड़ के आए, ये कब जमीन करबला कांप रही थी, और अल्लाह का बंदा हुसैन एक बड़ा इम्तिहान देने के लिए आगे बढ़ रहा था। ऐसे कैसे बताऊं, मेरा तस्वुर ये कहता है कि चारों तरफ मलाइका, उनके बीच में अंबिया, और दिल से शायद माँ ने कहा कि बेटा दिल संभाल ले, मेरे दूध की तासीर दिखा दे। हसन ने शायद आवाज दी होगी कि घबराना नहीं। नाने ने कहा मेरी जबान का असर दिखा दे। अरे बाप ने कहा होगा हुसैन अरे मेरा जिगर बता दे। मोमिनीन बस एक मर्तबा हुसैन ने आस्तीन उल्टे अकबर के जख्म में हाथ डाला, नेज़ों के फल पकड़ा और कहा या अली। अब जो नेज़े का फल निकला तो कलेजा निकल गया, अरे खून उबलने लगा। अकबर से हुसैन लिपट गए। अरे बेटा इन्ना लिल्लाहि व इन्ना इलैहि राजिऊन। मातम हुसैन।
बोले इमामे उमम पर्दा उठा लो कोई, बोले इमामे